Okay, so as we mentioned and as we went over in the last class, using the visualized object with the mantra, after becoming relaxed, after relaxing the body, the mind comes to unity, resting with this this visualized object inside. The first stage of meditation, this form of meditation, all the meditations that have to do with stilling the mind, with coming to calmness, with coming to tranquility, in the Buddhist literature are called samatha. So that literally translates to calm abiding. There are many methods for this. Visualizing a object of light is one, the breath is another, mantra is another, even visualizing yourself as a skeleton or observing fire is another. So all of these subjects lead the practitioner into deep states of calm and really incredible, profound clarity. Each one of them is suited for a specific type of practitioner. So I just mentioned skeleton. You may be wondering, why would the skeleton be a meditation object? That's very unusual. Well, there are different temperaments for practitioners. Some practitioners have the temperament called lust-based. It means that predominantly their thoughts have to do with sexuality, sensuality, and lust. So for the person like that, when they try to meditate, they sit down and that's all that they're thinking about. See the meditation object, they're observing the breath, and the breath gets distracted into thoughts of sensuality again and again and again, not able to really rest in open calmness for any period of stability. So the advice for the person like this was either continue to practice and this will eventually pass, or you need to take some steps to calm that particular thing, which was to observe a decaying corpse or to visualize one's body as a skeleton. For the person who has the temperament of being very angry, being very spiteful, they may have been recommended to do loving kindness as their main practice. The person who is very intellectual or always trying to understand things conceptually, and that finding that concepts are the predominance, their thoughts are predominantly concerned with that. The techniques for that person were mindfulness of breathing, so observing the breath, and it's called recollection of the Buddha's virtues. So that's a kind of faith recollection, where you generate a state of faith and you remember the enlightened qualities of the teacher. So each of the methods is suited to specific temperaments, but of the 40 objects, there are a few that are considered universals. This is one of them. It's called the aloka kasina, the light object. A person of any temperament could do this. Same thing with the breath. The breath was taught to people irrespective of temperaments. It's only when they start to have difficulty that another method would be employed or another method would be suggested. So what happens if you meditate on this beautiful, luminous, glowing sphere inside your body for a month or for 2 months or for longer? The first phase of meditational development is called momentary concentration. So when these words were translated from the Pali into the English, certain words, these were just the best English terms at the time, and they've stuck ever since. I don't even like the word concentration as a describer, as an accurate term. the better word would be stillness. One moment, please. Yeah, so concentration was the term that was used, translated by the early English translators. It just referred to the mind becoming unified. But concentration to us means a kind of hard focused, where we think of grade school and the teacher says, pay attention, and you just keep your attention on what you're doing. That is the general definition of concentration, or our understanding of it. But really here it's referring to a unified mind. So there are 3 phases of unification. The first is called momentary. Consider it momentary unification, but it's called momentary concentration. This means that we're meditating and we have mindfulness, so we're observing the object, the breath, or the meditation image, and we're aware, and then we're thinking about tacos, or we're thinking about breakfast tomorrow, or we're thinking about something that happened, and the predominance of our attention has gone to to whatever came up in the mind stream and away from the meditation object, or off of the meditation object. This happens even to very advanced meditators. So when we first start a meditation practice, or even when we first pick up a new technique or a new method, generally we'll be in the momentary phase. So it means that we can rest with the meditation object for a few seconds at a time, maybe a minute at a time, and the duration of our time in distraction is relatively long. So it could mean that before you've made it back to the meditation object, you were spending 2 or 5 minutes entertaining some story, or lost in a train of thought. This is all the momentary phase of meditation. So with continued practice, we shift from the momentary phase into what's called access concentration. Why is it called access? Because this phase, this level, is close to what's considered the levels of samadhi and absorption in Buddhist meditation. So you're starting to access that. In the territory in access concentration is pretty wide. It goes all the way from being still and being aware and having a gentle and sustained awareness that's beyond 5 minutes, all the way to you could be in access concentration for hours. So this means that the mind has become very unified at this point, and if it becomes distracted from the meditation object, it wanders for, it may be distracted or wandering for a short period of time, maybe a few seconds, before it automatically returns to the meditation object. Most of our practice, until we've become more skilled, is going to be an oscillation between the momentary and the access phases of meditation. In access concentration, in access unification, qualities of mind called the Jhana Factors begin to arise. What are Jhana Factors? Jhana is the Theravadan Buddhist word for samadhi. It means a very profound, deep, unified state of mind where the sense doors, the perception of the body, the perception of time, and the experience of thought has completely vanished, and the meditator is totally absorbed, has become absorbed into the meditation object. The word jhana literally means absorption. There are specific factors that begin to arise that support absorption. Those are the jhana factors. The five initial factors are applied attention, sustained attention, rapture. So rapture is like very, very profound happiness. The fourth one is bliss, and the fifth is equanimity, one-pointedness. So, having began to enter a more unified meditation where distractions are less pronounced and there's more stillness, calm, more continuity of awareness, these factors naturally begin to arise. They are inherent in the mind and they begin to surface. So they're like buckets of water. The applied attention, which is initially resting our mind on the meditation object, you can see that as the first bucket. That bucket becomes full, gives rise to the second one, which is sustained attention, which means that your awareness is now becoming continuous. It's resting there moment to moment with the meditation object. That moment to moment continuity begins to give rise to happiness. So you begin to notice that there's a gladdening that begins to arise because the content that was continuously in the mind stream begins to fade into the periphery and eventually fade away altogether. And as that fading happens, what's in your immediate awareness, which is the meditation object, the calm and clarity that comes from this reduction in mental processes, reduction in thought, gives rise to this natural happiness. When that natural happiness has matured, see that as another bucket that is becoming full. When the natural happiness has matured, and it would be classified as rapture. So this is rapturous happiness. Very, very strong happiness is arising. That very strong happiness eventually gives rise to bliss. Bliss eventually gives rise to equanimity and one-pointedness. When bliss has become perceptible and has become stable, even before bliss, even at rapture, the mind is not going to want to go anywhere else. But especially when bliss is arising, the mind is definitely not going anywhere else. It is unified. It is powerful. Bliss is suffusing the body. What's the function of this? What is the point of that? What is the point of a unified mind? What is the point of bliss? What is the point of having these factors arise? The point is that when the mind has entered sufficient purity, when it has entered sufficient stillness and sufficient power, it's able to access Dhamma, truth, in a way that would not ordinarily be possible with a coarse and distracted mind. That's really the point. When the mind has become unified, the mind has become bright. At this point, when happiness and bliss start to arise, the mind is realized as luminous, and the experience of inner light becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And eventually, that inner light can be used to gain insight. So this is where meditation would shift, in Buddhism particularly, would shift into insight practices. In the Dhammakaya tradition, you stay with that light, and in this method, you would stay with this light and this inner happiness and bliss until stillness is such a sufficient stillness is to okay. The mind as we know it and experience it currently vanishes at the center of the body, and the mind of the next subtle body arises. So that's the point of this practice. That happens in the absorption phases of the practice. So if Dawn was here, she would say this. You don't need to be concerned about that. And oftentimes that will arise only if a person is doing a meditation retreat, or if they've done this practice consistently for a very long period of time. When the mind becomes absorbed, drawn into the center of the body, and enters the next subtle body, at that point, in our tradition, we call that the arising of the sphere of the path. And it is the trailhead through all the successive subtle bodies up to the enlightenment bodies, which is the meaning of the word Dhammakaya, enlightenment or truth body. So that's pretty much the map. We work with this meditation object, we use the mantra, we emphasize happiness and relaxation and inner peace, really. And we come back to that again and again and again. Each of these stages, and even if we were to break down the three main ones that we just talked about, momentary, access, absorption, you could divide those into further subcategories. And particularly in the Tibetan tradition, they would divide momentary into 3 smaller stages and access concentration into 6 smaller stages. And ultimately the culmination is a totally unified mind, samadhi. So in this practice, we're coming back to the object again and again, having awareness or recognizing awareness again and again, and resting in that, and nurturing happiness, nurturing joy, nurturing inner peace. In meditations that involve objects, we have a subtle intention. We can release that intention, but for the most part, it requires intention even to just see the meditation object. And what we can do at the beginning of the sit is to have an intention. In Buddhism, it's called making a resolution. It's a fancy way for saying make a wish. So you have the intention, you make the wish that in this meditation, you'll rest happily, gently, with relaxation at the center of the body on the object. And by holding that gentle intention initially to gear yourself towards inner happiness and inner peace, eventually the mind will begin to respond to that, and happiness and joy will begin to come to the surface. So the importance of the happiness, the joy, and eventually the bliss is not for the bliss itself. It's not for the joy itself. It's for what that bliss can do. It's for what that bliss makes possible, which is total unification of mind. Once rapture arises and bliss arises, the mind is powerfully unified at the center of the body and very, very bright. So when we think of, oftentimes our definition of power is actually force. But in this case, by power, I mean that the mind is so still, the mind is so settled that you couldn't move it even if you tried. The mind is so absorbed in the object, so drenched in rapture and bliss, that it couldn't be taken out of that, even if someone was to somehow push your mind to the side. It would still remain in that. It's a very powerful experience. That's where this practice goes. It eventually leads to more refined levels of consciousness and refined bodies. But the initial territory and what we're initially working with is just basic stillness, relaxation, and presence, happiness, all the factors that were just mentioned. So for the meditation today, you don't have to worry about bliss unless that's a natural thing for you. If you're just naturally experiencing bliss, that's wonderful. But generally speaking, we'll work with gently cultivating happiness at the center of the body. As I've mentioned before, we use this as an object. The visualization doesn't work for you. You don't have to do it. You can observe the breath at the abdomen, or you can say the mantra, Sama Arahang. The other thing that actually the best frame for meditation in general is to be in a total place of non-doing, absolute non-doing. So total effortlessness. So if we were to start the meditation, we'll do this actually before we even start with relaxing the body. Give yourself permission to not do anything at all. Not even try to be aware, not try to sustain awareness. Nope. Just don't do anything. Just drop it all. And you'll notice in that non-doing, in that total release, all the muscles in your stomach are relaxed. In that total release, you just let go. That there's a natural awareness that is cognized, that is there. Rest in total release, and then just gently have this little sphere inside you. That's it. That's all it takes. That'll take you all the way. Really. So how concentration is presented sometimes is, how long can you keep your attention on something before it wanders? So exercises for that, they're taught in all kinds of books, stare at a dot and time, see how long you can keep your attention on that dot. Don't do that here. What you want to do is see how long you can rest and release before your body automatically tenses up. Your body, your neurology, your brain, your energy is not used to total release. That's why when we do it, we drop everything, we release. 5 minutes later, your stomach's tense again, your body's tense again, and then you have to release, you have to relax again, come to awareness again. That's the best frame to work with for this meditation and for meditation in general. How long can you be opened and relaxed for? How long can you rest in a total non-doing, total release for? This is just if we want to get an idea of how this is related to time, correct? But in the meditation, you could just forget about time. It's just an example to illustrate how really the point here is to rest, is to have an open awareness, because happiness arises from letting go. Happiness arises from surrender. The unified mind that is forced there by effort only works in retreat conditions, and oftentimes the results are fleeting. So it's like you can force your mind to be still, but only be still for a few seconds. But if you completely let go and you rest and release, you'll find that natural stillness is there, natural silence is there. just that usually there's engagement in the content of the mind, and that's what obstructs and that's what covers up that natural stillness and natural happiness. So in meditation, drop it all. No interest in your stories about anything about yourself. No interest in where this meditation is going. Everything that I just said, forget it. Okay, just forget it. It's there in your subconscious now. You heard it. You don't have to revisit it. You never have to revisit it again. You understand. The only thing to remember, the only thing that is super important is rest and release, and just very, very, very gently see this inside the body. Visualization doesn't work, don't see it. Use Sama Arahang. So what I've had to do before is meditating, try to see the crystal sphere. You can't do it. It's too much tension. So instead, I'll just be aware of the abdomen expanding, rising and falling, like a gentle movement. And then I would say Sama Arahang. So in breath Sama, out breath Arahang. In breath Sama, out breath Arahang. And just do that. Very simple. Or do absolutely nothing, just give up. And when you feel called to, say Sama Arahang occasionally. But the point here really is stillness. The point here really is awareness. It was even explained to me in Thailand, and I taught it this way too to all of you, that you have the capacity, you are able to still do this method and absolutely do nothing. You can just drop everything. Drop the mantra, drop the visualization, drop the breathing, just surrender and do nothing. That is now permitted with this approach. It was not 10 years ago, but it is now. So they used to teach it a very traditional way, force this thing inside your stomach and keep it there for as long as you can. And they found that didn't work too well for a lot of people. And that if they just surrendered and would use the mantra occasionally, or see the sphere if it was there on its own naturally, that was okay as well. So you have to find out what works for you, what makes your mind happiest, and let that be the indicator. Let happiness be the indicator.
Ryan, if I may, I'd like to ask for a little bit more details about the recent change. You said that the traditional method didn't work so well for people, right? Are we talking about Thai people, or is this a matter of discovering that people from across the world cannot adapt to the traditional Thai method so well?
It was both. It was both from within Thailand and abroad.
So basically, the traditional method just was challenging for everybody everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And that was a method they went for many years.
Yeah. The method for many years was just see this and put it inside your stomach. Right. You could see how many people would have difficulty with that. So some people know, like Dawn, obviously, Dawn was fine with it. She was great. But a lot of people, one, difficulty seeing a visual object. Two, where the heck is the center of the body, right? There's no nerves in there. You can't feel it like the surface of your hand. So that was an issue that people had as well. And after about 20 years, probably after 20 years, they've found that allowing more flexibility worked, and that as long as there was stillness, eventually the mind would sink into the center of the body, and the meditation would proceed from there. But especially in the early years when I started, they were very big on visualization only, very, very big on that. And that's not so much the case anymore. So okay, any questions, anyone?
Yeah, I just say when I was learning with Dawn 20 years ago, 25 years ago now, she taught with the visualization objects, finding the the circular crystal sphere, center of the body. That's what we did.
Exactly. And that's still what's taught, generally speaking. But now they teach that plus, okay, you can also do this, you could also do this, you can even not do anything. But 20 years ago, you would never hear someone say, oh, just give up, just surrender, and just hear Samarahang whenever you want to recite it. Nope, that was not a thing until more recently. And they found that this easier approach, they experimented with it. They launched a retreat where they only did these easier, more open approaches. It's called Dhammakaya Meditation Retreat, DMR for short. And they had the monks and nuns from the meditation group, the ones that have been in retreat for like 10 years, come out to teach that. And it was promoted mostly among the centers abroad, and the centers would ask people who've been coming to the temple for a long time if they wanted to go to Thailand and participate in this retreat. So they did, and it's the same story from everyone, and including myself. Oh, I did this meditation for so many years. It was so difficult. I could never see the sphere clearly, and now it's much easier. So at that retreat, they really emphasized letting go and relaxation and just doing what allows the mind to be happiest. So as I've said before, the real guidance, real marker here is happiness in this method. So if doing absolutely nothing makes the mind naturally glad, do that. If seeing a beautiful luminous sphere resting inside you causes gladness and happiness to arise, do that. If for some reason this ancient word Samarahang makes you happy, do that. If observing the breath is what allows happiness to arise, do that. And that's sufficient. Whatever it is that is allowing that happiness and inner peace to arise, just cultivate that and continue with that. And if the object changes, it's fine. If you feel that for some reason it's now becoming a sphere, or now a sphere is arising, or the sphere is vanishing, but now there's more happiness with the breath, just do that. Whatever is allowing for more happiness and mindfulness and awareness, that's really what we're aiming for. And when we get to the deeper end of access concentration, the genuine sphere does arise. So at that point, you could be in total non-doing all the way into samadhi. But up into that,
Okay.
do whatever.
So with this under this more flexible policy, the idea is that people who cannot, visualize the sphere can take some other path, but eventually they'll get to a stage where they can visualize the sphere. Is that it?
At that point, it's not a visualized object, so it's not really a visualization. It is a visual object that arises in the mind, but it's not being visualized. I mean, it's not like a mental creation. So if I was to take this and then remember it in my mind, at this point, this is what we call visualization. It's a a mental fabrication that you use to calm the mind. At the far end of deep access, when the genuine sphere arises, it's not fabrication. It's not something that you have to maintain at all. It's there, sustained by itself, but it is a mental object. So in Theravada, we call that nimitta. All right. I guess I could tell from Judy's face that I've talked for long enough. So we could
I love that. Thank you so much for all you did. It was awesome. It was amazing. And I wanted to ask you about whether or not I can turn my camera off for the meditation.
Oh yeah, of course. Yes, everyone can turn their camera off if they want. That's fine.
I go deeper, so I just thought I'd check.
Okay, we can all begin, everyone. This will be about a 45-minute sit because I wanted to explain all that for Judy. And we'll do a short loving kindness at the end, only 5 minutes, so we can get more time and stillness. So I'll guide for the first few minutes, and then after that, we'll be silent. So